You know, in the many years of travels, it's a little interesting but sad in some ways that very few people seem to love themselves. I've probably been in maybe 60 countries throughout all the years. And it seems to be quite a common thing for most people. So the question is, why is it so difficult? And if you go into it together, we find a couple of important things. One is that some people feel that if you love yourself, it's some kind of an arrogance. They're confusing loving yourself with self-love. There's a difference. The self-love is, I make myself important, kind of a narcissistic sense of what love is. But the love itself, in its purest state, is quite a simple thing, actually. We're suggesting that it's a natural in our system, that love is not something that's even passed back and forth, except in, of course, psychological sense. So if you look at the physical aspect of it, the physical love you're, I guess, pretty familiar with, if you haven't forgotten how it all works. But this idea of coming together where the two become a oneness of things. And in a sense, that's part of a tantric tradition as well. To understand the physical coming together is a deeper spiritual message. Of course, often it's fleeting, it's passing, a few minutes or an hour, if you're good, maybe a couple of hours, but in that sense, we forget the oneness of things. The psychological love has a different focus. It's much more about the getting my needs met, and if possible, sharing those needs together. Caring about the other person, that they also have a good life for themselves. But the spiritual is quite different. That is, there is not the personal involved in the love. And that's a little tricky for us in a sense. When you say, I love you, seems simple enough. But when we go into it spiritually, we ask, who is the I? Who acts? Who says this? I. So we ask about who is this I? Do I know who I am when I say love? And a direction towards you. Do I see you clearly? Because if you is a projection as well, who I'd like you to be, who you should be, maybe who you want to be, but maybe are not, what am I actually loving? Who is the person I'm actually loving? So if this person who's making the act of the love, on whatever level it is, does not love him or herself, how can you love someone else if you don't know yourself what this is? The words are easy to say, but that's why things often don't work out well, because it's done very superficially. It's meant well often, but the reality is that the love itself may be quite different. Consider that love, in a spiritual sense, is a field. It is not an act. A field. An expanse. A space. Where this being that's coming through you has a chance to be completely who he or she is. Can anybody give you this love, this space? So in a sense, in the spiritual sense, the act of loving is in itself already tied only to the psychological, and of course sometimes to the physical, but has nothing to do with the spiritual per se. Can you love somebody spiritually? Who would be there to love this other person? If it's space, and you're both in the space, do you see? There's no need to pass anything along. It's already there. We come back to our original question, though. If it's true, and it seems to be true, that many people have a difficult time with this love, if it's so obvious and so natural in a space sense, how come it's so difficult for us? That's part of our inquiry, if you could, tonight, is to understand if it's possible that this thing exists as a field, who is not taking that accepting that, enjoying that, and sharing it by being with others. Who wants to hold on to something, maybe deny it in themselves, and then give it to somebody else, as if they could. So we have 3 or 4 or 5 levels of illusions here, from the spiritual perspective. What is it about this love, if it's, again, it's a question mark, please, if you could research it for yourself, but if it's true that it's a field, then how come this person we're calling ourselves is not able to accept what is? You may consider that part of the answer lies in the sense of I itself. In other words, if we are focused and calling this person the I, it's already by itself limited. It's understandable, psychological, but in a sense, we're already building in the isolation. The sense of I can only exist in isolation. So right away, from the very nature of it, the separation taking place. And this, of course, is not love. So when the I is loving anyone, anything, already the separation is trying to make a connection to open the field with the you that may also be separate, split, may have many illusions also. It's no wonder that this I feels eventually also alone, that the love is quite weak and often doesn't last. May have moments of ups and downs and passion or not, but often does not last. And the you, of course, the same process takes place. In other words, it's as if it's an attempt to recreate something that already exists as a unit, as a wholeness. But we don't want to accept it as such. We want to do something with it, to make love. And that's why the word comes to make love. Can we make love? We can make war, but can we make love? And yet that's what we often say in many languages, very similar, no? So could this be our whole orientation is disturbed? We're trying to create something, do something, give something that may in fact already be a gift that's there for us. But we don't have the antenna for it. So consider for a moment, if you had grown up with the sense of field, and the person you're calling yourself was in that field, how that would have affected your growing up about this love situation. If you could consider for a moment. Imagine you come into a field of this space, this potential, this being complete. And this was natural in your environment. People you lived with, this is what we do with each other, what we accept with each other as a basis. It's a very different world, no? Many of us are trying, struggling to find a love, and many of our neuroses are based on the attempt, are they not, to find some kind of love. I want to be important, or have money, or be attractive, or something to get that love, be approved of by somebody. And all that is a substitute for love.